Stevens. Thank you for listening to the Station of the Cross, proclaiming the fullness of truth with clarity and charity.
Heard around the world on your Android and Apple mobile devices.
The Simple Truth, rising up to explore the difficult topics of real life. Join us as we proclaim the good, the true, and the beautiful with the simple truth of Jesus Christ and His Holy Catholic Church through Scripture, tradition, and the Catechism. And now, your host, Jim Havens.
It is great to be back with you on The Simple Truth, where we proclaim the life-giving reality of Jesus and His Catholic Church. We consecrate everything to the Sacred Heart of Jesus through the Immaculate Heart of Mary and the pure, strong heart of Saint Joseph. It is Throwdown Thursday, where we focus on themes of spiritual warfare and the real challenges that are before us, all to better understand the battles that we are in, to actively, effectively engage in fighting the good fight, to participate with the grace of God that is being lavished upon us, and to share in the victory of Christ now and for all eternity. We remember the quote often attributed to Saint Joan of Arc: all battles are first won or lost in the mind. And today, really breaking open a true heresy of our time. This heresy entails the following: the ends justify the means. Poverty is bad, so overpopulation causing poverty in developing countries, we have to help them by pushing abortion, contraceptives, abortifacients on them. Basically, let's sterilize them and kill their children if they do become pregnant, for their own good, of course. So proponents of this erroneous and evil ideology include people like Jeffrey Sachs. He was just appointed by Pope Francis to the Pontifical Academy of Social Sciences. Also folks like Melinda and Bill Gates and the Gates Foundation. And truly, it seems to me to be the default position on the world stage at this time. It's what all the cool kids are believing. But what about teaching and promoting sexual integrity, the virtue of chastity? That's a complete non-starter with this crowd, even though it is actually a vital part of the real solution. Who on the world stage is standing up and calling these folks out? Anyone at the Vatican? Anyone at the USCCB? Who on the world stage is calling for the promotion of sexual integrity and is clearly condemning the evils of abortion, contraception, and abortifacients that are being pushed on these developing nations? Who's really putting that into action in terms of policy? We're going to get granular on this today some, and then we're also going to step back and examine the big picture. This is a very important show, and we've got a great guest with us, the best guest, I believe, to help us to navigate all of this, and that's Michael Hichborn, founder and president of the Lepanto Institute. You can find all his good work at lepantoin.org. Michael, great to have you back with us. How are you today?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for having me back on.
Absolutely. Excellent. So we were discussing last Wednesday, Father Gerald Murray and I, we were discussing the terrible decision by Pope Francis to appoint pro-abortion population reductionist Jeffrey Sachs, supposed to be supporting the mission of the Church, the Pontifical Academy of Social Sciences, and certainly seems like complete nonsense that this fellow would be appointed into this position. So I was trying to lift up and examine the erroneous evil ideology behind all of this and how it's not just popular with many influential leaders throughout the world, but it's also quite popular within the current human leadership and bureaucracy of the Church. And as an example, I pointed to your good work in exposing some very big problems of Catholic relief services and how even after bringing them to the light, they have gone uncorrected. Father Murray was not aware of your work. He said he was familiar with Catholic relief services. He said, quote, "They do a lot of good. When there are problems, it's good that they are raised, but I believe that Catholic relief services wants to be responsive to those. At least that's my understanding." He went on to say, "My understanding with how Catholic relief services operates, they strive to be faithful to the mission and teaching of the Church, and if it's identified that they are cooperating in any way with organizations that don't follow the teachings of the Church, that they will not continue to work for those people or with those people, or they will ask those people to not do the the things, such as giving out contraception that is against Catholic teachings. Again, he went on to say that I basically want to say that Catholic Relief Services that is run by the American hierarchy is very much dedicated to protecting and promoting the mission of the church. And in fact, if they're not doing it, then it is a duty of justice to inform them of that and see how they respond. But I think the response is going to be, we want to correct anything that is truly wrong, end of quote. So Father Gerald Murray, good man, good priest. I did send him your detailed work on the violations of Catholic Relief Services after the show, so I know he's got it and is taking a look. I also sent the show to you afterward and asked if you'd come on and present the details to the audience, as well as explain how you've presented your findings to CRS over the years and what the response has been. But first, what is your initial reaction when people are not familiar with your work? And I'm guessing it's quite a normal reaction on their part to be in some degree of disbelief that CRS, which is so propped up by priests and by bishops in our nation, that they would be caught up in anything immoral and unresponsive in terms of correcting it. I guess what is your initial reaction when that does come up? Because I'm sure you face it quite often.
Sure. And, I have to say that it's totally understandable and normal for somebody to want to dismiss information that sounds like it's slamming the church or slamming the integrity of the church or slamming the integrity of the bishops, because quite honestly, as faithful Catholics, our duty is to be obedient and faithful and loving and supportive of the church and of our bishops. And I have to point out that when it comes to organizations like Catholic Relief Services, the corrections that we issue, the reports that we issue, are not a slam on the church. They are a statement of concern with regard to how church money is being used by bureaucrats in the name of the bishops and in the name of the church. So there has to be that distinction between those who represent the church and those who are officials of the church. No, Catholic Relief Services, in their work, because they have the name Catholic in their name, they are representative of the church, but they are not the church. They are not integral operations of the church. So there has to be that distinction. And again, the natural disposition of anybody who is looking to help the poor and to solve the problem of or provide solutions to the problem of hunger and lack of water and lack of medication. Obviously, what we want to do is make sure that we are doing what we can in order to aid those people. Those are all right, good, and laudable actions. But the problem comes when Catholic Relief Services starts taking money from the federal government in order to engage in programs related to HIV and AIDS. And the reason is that many of these programs come with caveats. They come with conditions attached to them by which CRS is obliged to engage in propagating these programs. The other problem is that when CRS implements a program of, say, PEPFAR, which is the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, or USAID, or the Global Fund, they don't get to decide what the program is. Those programs are already set up and instituted, and then CRS gets to bid for a contract in implementing the plan that has already been created. And many of these plans are government programs, and those government programs include the distribution of contraception or the promotion of contraception. And as a prime example, I will use what was called the DREAMS program. The DREAMS program was set up by PEPFAR, and I'll give you the goals of the DREAMS program, which, by the way, was created by and large by Deborah Birx, whose name people probably know from the global pandemic on COVID-19. She wrote this. She said, the goal of DREAMS is to reduce new HIV infections among adolescent girls and young women in up to 10 sub-Saharan African countries. Countries that are eligible for funding under DREAMS or DREAMS partnership will implement a core package of programs for adolescent girls and young women, including programming that strengthens their families, mobilizes their communities, and reduces the risks posed by their sexual partners. Okay? These words are key. They're very important. First of all, she talks about the core package of programs. In other words, all of the CRS programs, or CRS's participation in the DREAMS program, must make sure that there is the full implementation of this core package of programs for adolescents and young women. Dr. Birx then goes on a few paragraphs later in this document that we have, and she says this: because of the interventions in the core package, DREAMS could transform lives in many ways, decreasing HIV incidence, reducing unplanned pregnancy, increasing economic mobility, reducing violence, raising the status of women and girls in their countries. And then when we go through DREAMS documents, where it actually gives a summary of the core package of interventions, it includes the promotion of and the distribution of contraception. I'll just read to you this one little paragraph. Page 4 of this document, this PEPFAR document titled, I'll get back to it, I guess, after the break.
Okay, sure. But just so I understand, the gist at this point is, so in this particular program, CRS is taking government money and they're then overseeing that program? Is that what you're saying?
They are fully implementing the program as the lead implementing partner of the DREAMS project. We have documents showing that they are the lead program director for several different aspects of this project in Africa.
Okay, so there's one example. We're going to come back and hear more from Michael Hichborn on that and much more. What's the reaction to Catholic Relief Services when they find out about this information? Do they correct it? Do they not? And much more on The Simple Truth. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Here at the Station of the Cross, we proudly bring the truths of the Catholic faith to countless listeners through radio and mobile devices, and we're grateful for the feedback we've received.
Catholic radio has just been a lifesaver for me. I start my day with it. I listen to it all day long as much as I can. There's always people calling in with people who've lost children, and I love what everyone has to say and the advice of the Catholic Church and how to deal with suffering. It has given me the strength to get through the day and to get out of bed each morning. I am very grateful for it.
Catholic radio to me has been very informative on my religion. It has informed me of many things that I wasn't aware of or should have been aware of, and I've enjoyed it very much listening to it.
If you've been blessed by listening to the Station of the Cross, let us know. Call 1-877-888-6279, extension 112. Then share your testimonial with us.
Our family had been going through crisis. Little by little, we just found ourselves drifting completely away. I was afraid to go back. I mean, I cried the first time I received the sacraments again. Cried because I was back and because I had allowed God to become a part of me again. It's united our family. There's peace in our home that we didn't have before.
If you've been away from the Catholic Church for any reason, visit CatholicsComeHome.org today.
The Station of the Cross thanks our financial supporters who have enabled us to broadcast Catholic programs for more than 20 years. As a nonprofit lay organization not affiliated with your diocese, our apostolate is listener-supported. Through your generosity, we're able to inspire countless listeners with the gospel message and help lead them to a parish to be spiritually nourished by the sacraments. Thank you for your continued support, and may God bless you and your family.
The Simple Truth. Our guest today is Michael Hichborn, founder and president of the Lepanto Institute, lepantoin.org. It's important to remember that website because we can only get a little bit of the details in from these reports today. And again, the details on these reports, Michael is he is very meticulous in his research and in his what's the word I want to say? All of the ways that he puts together the details. They're all there. Screenshots, all kinds of stuff is there. So you can go as deep into this as you want to go. But he's giving us some details today, just so we can connect these dots and understand that yes, this is a very real thing. Again, Lepanto Institute is lepantoin.org. And so, Michael, again, if I have this right, you're explaining to us one example of a program that Catholic Relief Services is fully implementing. It's a program that was handed to them by the U.S. federal government, and the U.S. federal government gave them funds to then implement this program. And it involves some good things, perhaps, but also immoral activities. Is that a good way to describe it?
Yes, that's absolutely correct. And those immoral activities are the promotion and distribution of contraception. Again, we're talking about the DREAMS program. I've cited a document already talking about how it was set up, what its primary focus was. It said that its primary focus was including a core package of interventions. Those core package of interventions include things that would reduce unplanned pregnancies, and they were programs specifically designed for girls and young women. Now, I was starting to talk about this one document from 2017, which is from DREAMS, it's from PEPFAR, and what it outlines is exactly what this core package of interventions is. It's called the DREAMS Core Package of Interventions Summary. And in this document, number one on the list of this core package is empower girls and young women. Starting with these interventions are aimed at, quote, empowering girls and reducing their risk of HIV and violence. Okay, now this sounds innocuous, but on page 4 of this particular document, it identifies 6 goals for these interventions, including increasing contraceptive method mix. So under this heading, the core package of interventions says this: adolescent girls and young women in low-income countries experience high rates of unplanned pregnancy due to an unmet need for voluntary family planning, which increases their risks for pregnancy-related morbidity and mortality, and affects lifelong education and economic opportunities. Unplanned pregnancy is also cited as the reason for adolescent girls dropping out of school. So therefore, it says, the promotion of dual protection in which condom use is combined with another modern contraceptive method is a critical component of family planning HIV services, and it will help reduce the risk of HIV infection as well as unintended pregnancy. And then it says, increasing the variety of contraceptive methods available to all women will also help keep them HIV free. So in going through the rest of the core package of interventions or the core package of programs for the DREAMS project, it's very clear that increasing the use of contraceptives is a number one goal. This was confirmed by Catholic Relief Services itself. In 2019, they published a document titled 2 + 2 = 10, Multiplication Effect of Sequencing Life Skills and Social Asset Interventions. In that document, on page 3, there is a schematic, like a flow chart, and it talks about the core package of the DREAMS project. And in the middle, there's a square. It says empower girls and young women and reduce risk. And then there's a direct line to a little box that says youth-friendly sexual and reproductive health care condoms, HTC, which is, I can't remember what that stands for. And then it includes also contraceptive mix. On the other side of this schematic, there's a light blue circle that encompasses some aspects of what is pointed to with the empower girls and young women. And in this blue circle, it identifies the 4 children components, the 4 children project, which is what CRS was heading up. So they're trying to extricate themselves from the contraceptive part. The problem is that even if CRS were to remove itself from the promotion of contraception directly, as the lead on the project, it is their responsibility for ensuring that the other components are provided by other organizations. So in creating a Dreams Project in, say, Lesotho, where they were the head of the Dreams Project, they would have to bring in another organization, and that other organization would be directly responsible for introducing the contraceptive component of the Dreams program, which means that CRS's hands are directly clean of providing for contraceptive services, but they are complicit in the implementation of a program whose direct purpose and action is the promotion and introduction of contraception to young women. So this is a very direct connection. This is something that CRS is guilty of. What we found, and if you go to our website, lepantoin.org/CRS, you'll be able to see a list of reports at the very end that are all connected to the OVC projects. OVC stands for Orphans and Vulnerable Children. And in that report, what we discovered is that CRS created their own documents that were promoting condoms. And it was all in relation to the OVC projects, which were directly related to the Dreams project that they were implementing in Africa. So all of this interconnectivity of these programs that we discovered regarding CRS's work in Africa, we can show definitively and conclusively they absolutely are guilty of promoting contraception in Africa.
Okay, and so in this particular instance, how did you bring this to the attention to CRS, and what was their response?
We sent all of our reports to Catholic Relief Services, and we got a response to our first report. Actually, we didn't get it. It was sent by Bishop Caggiano, who is he's the current, chairman of Catholic Relief Services. And he sent a letter to all of his brother bishops basically saying, oh, pay no attention to the Lepanto Institute. We know that this isn't our fault. Some other organization produced these documents that were promoting condoms, and it wasn't us, and pay no attention. And when we put out our subsequent reports that showed the Dreams Project, we proved that Catholic Relief Services created a health referral network in both Cameroon and in Nigeria that included organizations that were directly promoting abortion and contraception, also that were linked directly to Planned Parenthood. He never commented on any of that and simply said, we're not going to respond to anything else put out by the Lepanto Institute, which is kind of the biggest problem. They just want to ignore what we say and tell everybody, pay no attention to them. What they say isn't true. That's not good enough. I'm sorry. It's just not.
Correction, and there's been really, it seems to be a defense on their part that they think what they're doing is totally fine. It seems to be fine with them. Is that accurate?
I think that's quite accurate. I have met with CRS. I've had meetings with CRS about the things that we've discovered. I'm always promised, oh, we'll get back to you on this particular project, or we'll talk to you about this, or we'll look into it and then let you know what we find. Not only do we never really get a full explanation, but their explanations make no sense. At one point, we gave information to CRS about a project called the Makolo Project, where CRS was directly responsible for creating the financial engine for locals to go around and introduce contraception to individual women in this poor country or poor area of Madagascar. In this project, because CRS was creating the financial engine, they actually produced a video talking about their involvement with the Makolo Project and how what they were doing was creating these small savings and loans communities, and these savings and loans communities were then going to be able to provide funding to clinical health volunteers, and these clinical health volunteers would go into the community and help young women. They showed one of these clinical health volunteers going into a woman's hut, and he pulls out a box. They don't really say anything about contraception. They don't say anything about what's in the box. They're just kind of talking about what's happening with this program that they are helping to finance. The box was called Confiance. It's like Depo-Provera. It's injectable contraception. So CRS in their own video, and at the end of the video, there are a full set of credits that says this was written by CRS, produced by CRS, translated by CRS, all rights reserved to CRS. So in this video, they included a clinical health volunteer who was going into someone's hut to give her an injectable shot of contraception in regard to CRS's participation in creating these savings and loans communities. And when I presented this information to CRS, the response that I got was, oh, that wasn't our video. That was a mistake. It seems that every single time I find something that CRS produces, like these condom promoting documents, suddenly it's somebody else's doing. Somebody else did that. They produced it in our name. They put it out in our name. Well, I'm sorry, when you put it on your own website and it's got your logo on it and it's got your copyright on it, and then all of a sudden when I find this information, I report on it, it's now somebody else's fault. It's really hard to believe. And when that is the consistent response that I get from CRS, it makes it even more incredible.
Right. And how many reports do you have like this? You've been doing this work for a long time in regard to CRS. How many similar types of incidents have you discovered and brought to their attention?
We have 32 individual reports at lepantoin.org/CRS. So we have a lot of information that we've covered over the years, and it's never been adequately addressed by CRS, not once.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so, and this is a bigger problem than just CRS. But first, let me ask you about CRS. Do you think that this seems to be a culture problem within CRS? They seem to accept this sort of behavior. Nobody seems to have a problem with it. If somebody like you or I was hired by CRS, a pro-life person who's not going to stand for any of this nonsense, faithful to the Catholic teachings and very strong in that regard, would we fit in any way with CRS? How would we be treated there?
No, in fact, I've had individuals who had worked at CRS contact me to let me know that there is a very serious culture of persecution of those who are traditionally or orthodox in their thinking. It's really unfortunate, but what CRS does is they hire from other organizations that are very pro-abortion, very pro-contraception, and when they come into CRS, they have that ideology already in mind. So it's a huge problem.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we're going to get to the bigger picture on this when we get back. This is extremely important information, an extremely important show today with Michael Hichborn. We're going to find out a bit more about why this is so important on a grand scale when we get back after this. If you're not already seeing how important this is, you're going to see even more when we get back. But God bless the work of Michael Hichborn and the Lepanto Institute. Again, you can find the work there at lepantoin.org. We'll be right back.
Prayer to Saint Michael. O glorious Prince of the heavenly host, Saint Michael the Archangel, defend us in the battle and in the fearful warfare that we are waging against the principalities and powers, against the rulers of this world of darkness, against the evil spirits. Come thou to the assistance of men, whom Almighty God created immortal, making them in his own image and likeness and redeeming them at a great price from the tyranny of Satan. Fight this day the battle of the Lord with thy legions of holy angels, even as of old thou did fight against Lucifer, the leader of the proud spirits, and all his rebel angels, who were powerless to stand against thee. Neither was their place found any more in heaven. And that apostate angel transformed into an angel of darkness, who still creeps about the earth to encompass our ruin, was cast headlong into the abyss together with his followers. But behold, that first enemy of mankind, and a murderer from the beginning, has regained his confidence. Changing himself into an angel of light, he goes about with the whole multitude of the wicked spirits to invade the earth and blot out the name of God and his Christ, to plunder, to slay, and to consign to eternal damnation the souls that have been destined for a crown of everlasting life. This wicked serpent, like an unclean torrent, pours into men of depraved minds and corrupt hearts the poison of his malice, the spirit of lying, impiety, and blasphemy, and the deadly breath of impurity, and every form of vice and iniquity. These crafty enemies of mankind have filled to overflowing with gall and wormwood the church, which is the bride of the Lamb, without spot. They have laid profane hands upon her most sacred treasures. Make haste, therefore, O invincible Prince, to help the people of God against the inroads of the lost spirits, and grant us the victory. Amen.
Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here with Michael Hichborn, founder, president of the Lepanto Institute, lepantoin.org, talking a bit about Catholic Relief Services, some of the big problems there that are not being addressed, not being corrected by them, even as they are being pointed out to them. Some very, very big problems. Go back to the early parts of this show to learn about that, but trying to look at the big picture, connecting the dots to the bigger picture in all of this. Michael, again, you've done terrific work in all of this. It's so helpful. I don't know anybody else that is putting this stuff out there, doing the research, and then putting it all out there for people to be able to access and really make some important decisions on, such as where are they going to give their money. It doesn't seem wise. It seems actually very unwise to be giving any money at all to Catholic Relief Services at this point, but also other organizations that you write detailed reports about, and again, sadly involved in some of these immoral practices. The Catholic Campaign for Human Development. There are others as well within that USCCB umbrella, I believe, but then the umbrella even gets bigger. I've seen reports that you've put out showing how all of what is going on there under the umbrella of the USCCB, that's all under a larger umbrella that is taking place within the Vatican. I believe Caritas International and some other organizations that, sometimes I get lost in the details of it all. I'm just sitting back with my mouth open, my jaw dropped open, thinking, what in the world is going on here? All leading up to even the largest umbrella, it seems like, of all, with all of this sort of activity, which is the World Social Forum, which you've gotten into some. And so I started learning about that basically because you pointed it out. And so this World Social Forum is really something that we ought to know about if everything is kind of flowing from that. And it really considers itself this global justice movement, and they're certainly pro-abortion, pro-contraception, pro-abortifacient, all of this that we're talking about that's being pushed on these African nations as well as Asian, Latin American nations, developing countries. Help us to connect the dots, help us to understand some of that bigger picture.
Right. So the World Social Forum, the problem with the World Social Forum really does center around Caritas Internationalis. Caritas Internationalis is the umbrella organization run out of the Vatican. It is a Vatican agency. Okay, the head of Caritas Internationalis is Cardinal Luis Tagle of the Philippines. He's commonly referred to as the Asian Pope Francis. But Caritas it's a conglomerate organization. Its members include CAFOD, Troker, Catholic Relief Services, Catholic Charities USA, Court Aid. Any organization throughout the world that has the Caritas name attached to it is a member of the Caritas organization. It falls under the umbrella of Caritas Internationalis. Caritas Internationalis is on the governing body. It's called the International Council of the World Social Forum. And the World Social Forum, unfortunately, is a massively pro-abortion, pro-LGBT, communist organization. And when I say communist, I'm not being flippant. We're talking about people marching through the streets with banners of Karl Marx, with the big red hammer and sickle flag of the Soviet Union. It was organized primarily by socialist organizations in Porto Alegre, Brazil, back in 2001. And ever since then, they have been promoting abortion, contraception, homosexuality, and communism. In 2017, the World Social Forum went through kind of an internal reorganization. The International Council was accused by some of not being active enough, not being more decisive and directorial with regard to how the World Social Forum process works. And as a result of this, they kind of restructured the International Council and decided, okay, the International Council is now going to be responsible for which organizations are going to have a platform to speak at the World Social Forum, for which organizations we are going to promote, what ideologies and what various things that are going on in the world we want to discuss and make a topic of import for the rest of the members of the World Social Forum. And at the head of this reform was Caritas Internationalis, a guy named Pierre George, or George Pure. I a little dyslexic here. I can't remember which name is first. It's the problem of having two first names, a first name and a last name both being first names. Anyway, this guy, Pierre George, he is Caritas Internationalis's representative on the International Council of the World Social Forum. And he was heavily involved in making all these suggestions and changes to the way the World Social Forum's International Council works, making all the members of the International Council more directly involved in making these decisions about who gets promoted, who gets to talk, what they get to talk about, etc. So in 2017, they went through this revamping of the World Social Forum's process, and what we found are Facebook posts from the International Council of the World Social Forum that were directly promoting abortion. They were celebrating the change in law regarding abortion down in Argentina. They were promoting Marxism. They even put a Facebook post out about this 10-week course on Marxism that you could take. They put out a statement or a promotion of something called Plato for Revolutionaries, which was a program of the Left Forum, which is a communist agency. And right there in the middle of the picture of this thing is Vladimir Lenin with the big Soviet flag. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. But so those are just social media posts. What they actually promoted at the World Social Forum was beyond deplorable. We found 17 hours worth of promotion or worth of video that was broadcast through the World Social Forum, where these women, they got together, they held a Pachamama ceremony that was very pagan and I would say actually was a bit occultic. I mean, it looked like they were practicing witchcraft. They had a black candle that they lit and said that we call upon the Pachamama to bless our endeavor and to help us and guide us in fighting for what we feminists are trying to fight for. And then they went on to talk about how they were trying to pass pro-abortion laws in Catholic countries. And they were talking about how they wanted to use the what they called the victory in Argentina as the blueprint for going into various other Catholic countries, including Poland, to change their pro-life laws. All of this was broadcast through the World Social Forum. So when you go back to Caritas Internationalis and their involvement on the International Council, the governing body of the World Social Forum, it's quite clear that what they are involved in and what they are guilty of, because they are directly complicit in allowing this to happen in their name, is the promotion of abortion, contraception, homosexuality, and Marxism. There's no two ways about it. So when you have that kind of ideology coming from the umbrella agency for groups like Catholic Relief Services and Catholic Charities and all the other international aid and development agencies of the bishops' conferences of the world, the bottom line is what they are participating in and their ideological attachments include the allowance of the promotion of these grave intrinsic evils. And that's really at the crux of the problem.
Yeah, so the culture problem here seems to be even much bigger. And just for people to be able to understand exactly what we're talking about in terms of some of these evils that are being pushed on these nations, I do want to get to a clip here. This is Uju Ikiocha. She is Culture of Life Africa president, author of Target Africa, Ideological Neocolonialism in the 21st Century. This is her. She was on EWTN Live with Father Mitch Pacwa back on 2000. 2018. Let's hear how she puts it in her own words. She's basically talking about, it seems like giving aid to these countries is a great thing, but then you find out what is actually going on with this aid. Here it is, Uju Ikiocha.
Population aid given to African nations has now exceeded any money given to African nations for education, for water and sanitation, for social amenities. It is unbelievable, and sometimes you wonder, why are they spending so much money? Why are they wasting the money? Because they're bringing the aid, but they're not allowing the Africans to choose what the aid will be used for. They are dictating to us, and they are dictating to African leaders, this is where we want the money used for. They are using it for population control. They're using it to hypersexualize African youth. They are using it to bring in, unsolicited things like condom programs for children in different African countries. They are giving it to abortion-providing organizations like International Planned Parenthood Federation, Marie Stopes International, which is a British organization. So these people are qualifying for aid, and a lot of the Western countries are flocking to them and giving them money as well. So the nations are great players here, and I call them the neo-colonial masters, who have taken the place of our old colonial masters. They are the foundations, like the Gates Foundation, the Hewlett.
Is this the Gates from Microsoft?
Yes, that's right. The same Gates from Microsoft.
So Bill Gates.
Bill Gates and Melinda Gates.
And Melinda Gates, his
have
wife.
gone into, they're really big now on the foreign aid scene, but then they are also some of the biggest drivers of population and contraception projects across the different African countries and even beyond, other parts of the developing world. Yes. So the Gates Foundation, the Hewlett Foundation, George Soros' organization called the Open Society, they're also
George
very
Soros?
big. Yeah, George Soros, who runs the Open Society, but if anyone would check, Open Society does quite a lot of funding in Africa, things on homosexuality. They are funding these projects, things on transgenderism, in African countries where no one is asking for these things, but then they are allocating millions of dollars to these, let me call them fringe projects, just because those fringe projects match up with their own ideology.
Okay, so clearly there is a very strong ideology in the world that sees the evils of contraception, abortifacients, and abortion as good, or at least necessary evils. I think it's also correct to say that this ideology is also very strong within the human element of the church, even though the church clearly teaches otherwise. This is an evil way of treating people, even if it is well-intended, and I guess we can afford that sort of benefit of the doubt. These folks might think what they're doing is good, even though what they're doing is very evil. These evils need to be condemned by the church and by those who are in leadership positions within the church. These evils have to be condemned as evil and certainly must not be promoted in any way. So that's my question to you, Michael. Let's just go back to Catholic Relief Services. Look, I looked at their annual report. It shows a map around the world of the nations they are in. These are the same nations that Melinda Gates and others are pushing these evils in. So it's not as if they, it's not related to what CRS is up to. It's directly happening, and CRS is clearly even involved in it. Is CRS out there condemning this practice, even if they're saying, well, other people are doing it, we're not really doing it? Are they standing up strongly and condemning it all and condemning these folks? Are they trying to protect the African people in these nations from these abuses, and these other nations, Asian nations, Latin American nations? Are they trying to protect them from these evils that are taking place? And are they not just playing defense, but actively teaching people the virtue of chastity and teaching the marital act as just that, an action that is only good within marriage? Is CRS doing any of this? I would think that it could be used for great good if the folks that were in charge of it were willing to really put the work in, do the culture change, and use it for what it ought to be used for. But is any of that good actually happening?
No, in fact, very unfortunately, Catholic Relief Services regularly partners with organizations like Population Services International, which was created by an international pornographer for the purpose of spreading contraception throughout the world. It regularly partners with Save the Children, with Care International, with Action Aid. I could produce a list of some 30 organizations that CRS has worked with as partners in implementing these programs, and not once do they ever warn, don't trust this organization because of their spread of contraception. They never say anything along those lines, not once.
Yeah, well, I mean, it all seems very, very clear what is going on here is that they're going along with it because they seem to agree with that ideology, that these folks aren't condemning it, but going along with it. I don't know how it could be more clear. They're not correcting it when it's brought to their attention. Look, this is stuff that this ought to rile us up a little bit with some righteous anger, want to overturn a few tables here. I mean, come on, what has to be done here to get people to do the right thing, specifically people that are in leadership positions within the Catholic Church? We'll be right back with Michael Hichborn. Stay tuned.
Here at the Station of the Cross, we proudly bring the truths of the Catholic faith to countless listeners through radio and mobile devices, and we're grateful for the feedback we've received.
It just really connected me to my faith. I always considered myself 100% Catholic, but didn't really realize that I wasn't fully practicing my faith, so I learned so much through the Station on the Cross and began just getting deeper in my prayers and feeling just so much closer to God and so well-versed in learning more about the Bible and more about what actually it means to be Catholic. So it became very, very important to me, and I listen to the radio station daily, and I absolutely love it. I make it a regular practice of donating every time they have their fundraising, and just love it and wouldn't want it to ever go away.
If you've been blessed by listening to the Station of the Cross, let us know. Call 1-877-888-6279, extension 112. Then share your testimonial with us.
Are you ready to take on the world of flesh and the devil with just the facts? This is Jesse Romero, host of Jesus 911, heard weekdays at 2 p.m. Eastern. I'm joined each day by a variety of co-hosts like Ruben Nava, Paul Clay, Dan Schneider, and my amazing wife, Anita Romero. We tackle Catholic devotions, spiritual warfare, family life, saving America, and everything in between. Join us each weekday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific for Jesus 911. God bless you. Keep the faith.
The Station of the Cross appreciates the generosity of our supporters. We are committed to keeping our donors' accounts up to date. If there have been changes made to your payment information, please call us so that we can update your account. 1-877-888-6279, extension 104. Or update your information online at thestationofthecross.com. Thank you for your generous support of Catholic Radio.
The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here with our guest today, Michael Hichborn, founder, president of the Lepanto Institute, lepantoin.org. I do want to get to Jeffrey Sachs and also make a connection on something that Michael had already raised, which is Marxism, communism, and an even bigger picture on all of this in just a moment. But first, Michael, I've got to have you address this because this is so often the knee-jerk response from anybody with CRS or anybody maybe in a stage of disbelief about what is actually going on here with CRS or with any of these other sorts of groups. They'll say, well, they do some good work. They do some good work. So this is the argument that they make, and then they look the other way if they are aware of anything. What is your response to look at all the good they do?
It doesn't matter, how much good you do. The fact of the matter is that one simple mortal sin is going to send you to hell. You could do the greatest things in the universe and commit one mortal sin, and that's it. That's your ticket out of heaven. You're not going to heaven by committing one mortal sin. So if you want to talk about all the laudatory things that CRS does, and believe me, I'm not denigrating the good work that CRS does. The problem is that as long as they are introducing people to organizations that are promoting abortion and contraception, as long as they are implementing programs that are directly pro-abortion or pro-contraception or designed to introduce people to contraception, even if CRS can say, well, our hands are clean because we didn't actually do the direct work on this, at the end of the day, you are directly responsible for creating a system of scandal by which those individuals are going to be introduced to these horribly horribly evil programs. You can't save or you can't feed bellies and starve souls, but that's exactly what CRS does. They go around, they feed bellies, but they're starving their souls, or in some places they're poisoning the food when it comes to promoting abortion and contraception in these other programs, or allowing it to be done in the programs that they're implementing. It's completely unconscionable. And I remember once meeting with Bishop Kakanis, and I was telling him that I had discovered documents where CRS was complicit in introducing programs that were promoting contraception. And I was going through all the information. He looked at it and he said, well, we do a lot of good works. I don't see anything here about the good works that we do. And I said, Your Excellency, I didn't fly 3,000 miles to give you a pat on the back. I flew 3,000 miles to alert you to a problem that I had discovered. Oh, well, we take this very seriously. No, they never do. They never do.
Yeah, it's outrageous. And so really whoever the bishop is that is in charge of that, it's really his responsibility to really make sure that things are being corrected or not. And so I guess the buck really stops with whatever bishop is the one in charge.
Absolutely. And in fact, I would take it a step further and say that, I can understand a bishop saying that he wants to trust what his staff is telling him, that he wants to believe that the program is what it claims to be and that it's not doing these horrible things. But relying on the people that are being accused of doing something immoral to investigate themselves and come back and exonerate themselves is not the way to do things. You have to have an independent study. All I'm doing is producing reports and saying, Your Excellency, there's a very serious, a very grave problem here. You need to appoint somebody to investigate it from the outside and look at the information and say, hey, is this accurate? Is what Mr. Hichborn and the Lepanto Institute, is what they're reporting, is this true? And if it is true, how do we fix it? But if you're going to rely on the people that are being accused of implementing these programs to fix or address or even claim that whether the problem is true or not, you're not going to get a straight answer. It's just not going to happen.
And it's a culture problem within the organization itself. Now, that can absolutely be fixed. It's very, very difficult to change the culture of an organization. But if you have the will to do it, there are steps you can take that absolutely are effective, but you have to have that will to do it. And so that's really where we're at there. I do want to get in this clip, though, of Jeffrey Sachs. This is the economist who was appointed by Pope Francis to the Pontifical Academy of Social Sciences recently, and he's been around the Vatican now for quite a while under Pope Francis's pontificate. But these are some concluding remarks that he made. I want to get your thoughts on this. He made these concluding remarks at a conference on new forms of solidarity at the Pontifical Academy of Social Sciences back in February of 2020. Now, this was only a few weeks after he publicly endorsed Bernie Sanders for U.S. president, so that gives you some idea of where he stands. But here he is, Jeffrey Sachs, in his own words.
The U.S. is a problem. It became a far more significant problem with Donald Trump. He may or may not be president after November. But the U.S. became vastly more complicated for the world since 2017. These are not polite things to say. Nobody likes to say them, but I want to say them to explain a few things that I think are extremely important. The U.S. has blocked every multilateral initiative of recent years. It is the only country pulling out of the Paris Climate Agreement. It is the only country that pulled out of the JCPOA agreement with Iran. There is not a China-U.S. trade war. There is a U.S. trade war on China.
All right, so there he is, Jeffrey Sachs. And so clearly he is not a fan of the United States of America being in any sort of position of power on the world stage. He wants to knock them down. And he says, look, that's inevitable. That's going to happen. He goes on to say in his remarks that there can be no U.S. primacy in the world anymore that is safe for the world. So again, this seems to be a larger ideology here. I would say a sort of globalist ideology that says, look, we've got to bring China to the table. We've got to get them involved in the decision making here. We've got to take the U.S. down a peg, and it kind of makes sense in explaining what's going on right now with the Biden-Harris administration, as we see, it seems like from the inside out, our country being eroded more and more. It's almost like self-inflicted wounds that are taking place to bring the U.S. down. And so what is your take on this? This is big picture now in terms of the spread of a sort of globalist, Marxist, communist ideology around the world. And with the appointment of Jeffrey Sachs, we almost have to say, do we have now a weaponized sort of situation with the Vatican, who is very much also invested in bringing the United States down a peg?
Well, I think it's very important to understand that Jeffrey Sachs was not only talking about climate change and talking about all these international programs that he was involved in, but he was the principal architect of the Sustainable Development Goals. And what was Pope Francis' number one priority after he came into office? There is a document from the United Nations that was published in 2014. And it stated specifically that Ban Ki-moon, the then then Secretary General of the United Nations, and Jeffrey Sachs met with Pope Francis and met with a whole bunch of people in the Vatican to talk about the project of sustainability. And he said in this document that Pope Francis in this meeting said that he would commit the entire Catholic Church to the project of sustainability. His first encyclical after that meeting was Laudato Si, which made 27 references to sustainability and several direct references to the Sustainable Development Goals. And ever since then, Pope Francis, in speeches at the United Nations, in speeches to various world leaders, in speeches at various meetings at the Vatican, has promoted the Sustainable Development Goals. Those goals are communist in nature, they're pro-abortive, they're pro-contraceptive, and they are a direct assault on family, on property, and on the free practice of religion. They are completely antithetical to the Catholic faith, but Jeffrey Sachs represents and created them specifically.
That's right. Goal 3 and 5 call for universal access to reproductive health services, a euphemism for abortion and contraception. Look, we got to keep praying. So keep praying, keep doing the good work that you can do. Raise your family well, form them well, teach them the real news that is going on. And thank good people that are doing good work out there, like Michael Hichborn and the Lepanto Institute. Michael, thank you so much for all your good work, for being with us today.
Thanks so much for having me back on. God bless you.
God bless you. The next